Well, yes, I do like a home that's clean and cozy and comfortable. But at the same time, I learned I need to also be practical. Welcome to another edition of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam, and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for nearly 38 years. And in that time, through lots of trial and error, which I'm sure you can all relate to, I've come up with a few things that really work for me. What I find, and I think I've said this before, I cannot stand to have a lot of extra stuff around. Everything that's in my space has to be useful to me, or else give me tremendous satisfaction to own it, because if it isn't useful, it's just taking up space and it's causing me anxiety maybe, or irritation at least. Well, I wanted to tell you today about a few things that over the years I have learned really work well for me. And at the same time, I recognize that it is coming on towards Christmas, the traditional season for making a Christmas list and all that. And I'm not trying to encourage anyone to buy anything. Believe me, I'm not. None of these items are sponsored in any way. But I do want to let you know that these things work for me, and there might even be things that you would want to try. And since Christmas is coming, maybe you put it on your Christmas list. That way you can test it out. Maybe it'll work for you, and I would love to know if it does. So let's go ahead. We're just going to look at a few items today, and there's a whole bunch more that I could do on just household kinds of stuff. I might make another video on that. But let's look today at the kinds of things that I just use personally. Well, one thing I love about the fall is candles, and I have candles throughout the house. I like the jar candles because if I forget and leave them on when I step out for an errand or something, I don't worry about burning the house down like I might with a taper candle or some other kind. But those candles require lighting. And I have to tell you, I think I've mentioned before, matches and I just are not good friends. We don't get along real well. I've used the wooden matches to better effect than the paper matches for sure, but I don't really like them. So I continue to look for better ways to light my candles, and I want to show you just several things that I have that have helped me. This right here is probably the most basic one of all. This is different brands call them different things, but I always call them Aim and Flame because the first one I bought, I think, was called that by the manufacturer. So I've always called them that. They're very handy because all you need to do is squeeze the trigger and you get a flame and you can light the candle that way. And the one I just showed you works really good for candles that are fairly new and the wicks are pretty high up in the jar. But what happens when you get a candle that's not quite the right shape, or the candle wax burns down quite a bit and you need to get down lower in the jar? Or if the candle is sitting up on a dresser or a higher shelf, how do you get down to the wick? Well, this is when I use this kind, which is really handy because it has a bendable, whatever you call this thing. I don't even know what it's called. The little hose thing on the end is bendable. That way you can get at parts of your candle that you might not have been able to easily otherwise, and that's very useful. The other thing about those, though, is that I have found that even the ones that claim to be refillable, I have not had very good luck with refilling them. Even though you get quite a few uses out of them, it seems that once they're empty, it's sort of a waste of money to buy the fuel that you put in. My husband has tried that a few times. It really has not worked very successfully for the most part. So if you're really on a budget and you don't want to have to keep buying things over and over again, you might try something like this. I bought this one a few years ago. You charge it up using a USB port so you can charge it from your computer. It comes with a little cord and then you get lots of uses out of it. It's got a series of buttons on it, which I don't know that you can really see, but it's got one thing left. Yeah, I need to charge this up again, obviously. I haven't charged it since last year when I was using it. But what it does is it creates a spark between these two little prongs here. So if you surround the wick with this end and then push the button, it will send out a spark that lights the candle. And again, if the candle wick is fairly high up in the jar, it works great. It does bend. You can use that with candles that get a little further down in the jar. But that one I showed you the second one, the one that has the hose that really bends and is pretty long, I like this one a lot for candles when they get burned down quite a bit, because I can reach down in there pretty well. But, you know, the thing about candle wicks is that they do get too long, and then how do you get them to be short? And I used to try going on them with scissors or nail clippers or what have you. But I finally broke down some years ago, and I bought myself a set of candle wick trimmers. It's kind of hard to figure out how to show them properly, but I'll put up a picture of them. They're just like scissors. They work with that same action, but the business end of it is sharp enough that it will trim the wicks for me. I highly recommend it. I haven't had to use a match in I don't know how long, and that suits me just fine. Well, the next item that I wanted to talk about was something I think I've mentioned to you before, and that is my button hook. It buttons up my shirt for me, and it works really well. I don't know that you're going to be able to see this very well, but if you take the side that's got the button holes, and you put your button hook thing through the buttonhole, and then you get a button on the other side, you can get this, and it actually will work with fairly big buttons. You can get this around the button and then just pull it through the buttonhole, and it will button your shirt for you. And it works the same way in reverse. You can unbutton your shirts as well. And especially with the little buttons, I just cannot deal with them. So I highly recommend these. They're not very expensive. I think I got mine on, well, you could have guessed, I got mine on Amazon. But I think they're very available in many places. Yeah, another thing that I want to mention is the joy of wireless. We have wireless in our house, and so that helps in just being able to use your computer in any room you want. I mostly keep mine here on the desk, as you probably know if you've watched my videos. That's where I'm always at, is in my study, at my desk. But one thing that's really helped me is a wireless mouse, and I'll just show you the little guy that I got. I guess he's sort of more of a hamster than a mouse. But, you know, it's amazing how inexpensive mice are. Is that what you call them, mice or mouses? I don't even know. But anyway, it's helped a lot because having all these cords all over the place, it's really irritating to me to have to deal with them and make sure they don't get wrapped around something or pull something or whatever. And it never looks neat and tidy. So I invested in a wireless mouse, and I have never regretted it. So again, they're widely available. Now, another thing that I highly, highly recommend, and I'm just going to put up a picture of it because you can't really see my keyboard because I'm using my laptop as the camera. When I first got this laptop, I had done this in the past with my other laptop. So first thing I did practically was get some stick-on letters that are much larger than the ones that come standard on the keyboard. And they also are higher contrast. And you can get them in all different things. I've had black with kind of a fluorescent green. I've had black with white. There's white with black. There's whatever color combination would be the best for you. But it sure makes life easier for me. I don't actually touch type. So that was one of my life's regrets probably, is that I never learned how to touch type. I was a young person back in the typewriter era. And the only people that really learned how to touch type were people who planned to have a career in secretarial work, which, and I know I'm being simplistic. There's lots of other reasons one might use a typewriter, but I did not want to be a secretary, and so I just chose not to learn how to touch type. And then the computer came along, and it wasn't long before I wished that I had learned. But so I still kind of just use the hunt and peck method. But what I find is that I need to have high contrast and larger lettering on the keys so that my hunting and pecking is actually more successful than not. And I think I'm just basically going to leave it at that. There's many more things that I could talk about that have helped me make my life easier, but I don't want to overwhelm you with all this different stuff. I think I probably will at some point make another video that talks more about things around the house, things that are part of the household furnishings or whatever that have helped me a lot. But the ones I focused on today, as I said, are more the personal items that I have found very useful. And everything on the list was something I've had for a while, so I've been able to test it and give you an honest evaluation of whether it helped me or not. And I now would really turn it over to you and love to know what kinds of items you use around the house that make your life easier and work really well with for those of us who maybe have numbness in our fingers or limited mobility or what have you. I would really appreciate knowing that. But that's all I have for you today. So take especially good care of yourself now that the holidays are almost upon us. Don't allow yourself to get stressed into saying yes to things you don't really want to do, because you're only going to suffer for it. And if you suffer, I suppose everyone around you is likely to be suffering too. Just take really good care of yourself, and I will see you again in my next video.